Thanks everyone for joining our webinar today titled Leveraging Software-Defined Interconnect to Integrate Hybrid Cloud at the Edge, brought to you by Webair and PacketFabric. My name is Sagi Brody. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Webair, and I'm joined by Anna Claiborne, co-founder and SVP of Engineering and Product at PacketFabric.
Hi,
Hi, Anna.
Siggy.
Hey, Anna, thanks for joining.
Yeah, excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. And so our agenda today is first to provide everyone with a high-level overview of what PacketFabric does and sort of what software-defined interconnect and SDN networking can do. And then we're going to talk about how Webair specifically has used PacketFabric to provide our enterprise customers with some integrations at the edge, how we've been able to solve issues related to production workloads and integrate hybrid cloud at the edge with our customers using PacketFabric, as well as how we've solved pain points around offsite backups and disaster recovery using this really cool new SDN technology that PacketFabric has given us. And I'll actually show you sample architectures and some neat things that we've done by sort of putting their technology together with some of our traditional services. So I will pass it off to Anna now to go over sort of what PacketFabric can do. Thanks.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. So PacketFabric is a modern-day telecommunications carrier that delivers agile network services. And what that means is that we are a network that behaves much in the way that your favorite cloud players behave. We have a UI and an API for provisioning all services on top of our network. And so what does this actually mean as far as to you as a user, and what does our platform stack look like? So what the PacketFabric platform allows you to do is deploy, upgrade, and scale services in minutes, as opposed to traditional telecom services that can take anywhere from 30, 60, or 90 days to deploy a simple point-to-point link. PacketFabric takes approximately 3 minutes to deploy a service from LA to New York. You can also choose between predictable monthly billing and usage-based options. So if you would like to, whether you want to deploy 50 megs or 100 gigs, you can pay for that as a recurring monthly fee, or you can simply use on a usage-based option and only pay for what you use. Our entire UI that you use to deploy services is built upon our standards-based REST API. We also have a premium SLA that's backed by our highly diverse optical network. We have 2 or more paths out of every data center that we're in. And in the event of any fiber disruption cut, we automatically fail over to backup paths. It's 50 millisecond fast failover, so there's no disruption to service. We also provide superior visibility into our network performance and what's going on in the network. Any statistic that can be collected off a network, so anything on the network interface, anything on the actual virtual circuit itself, we present to our customers through nice looking, Grafana style graphs in our UI, and also surface those on a separate metrics API where you can pull those into any external system you would like. The PacketFabric platform architecture is we actually operate our own optical network, and then on top of that we operate our own switched Ethernet switch network. Then our API is what interacts with the switch network, and on top of that is the UI, which customers then either the UI or the API to provision services. So let's take a little bit of a deeper dive into how PacketFabric connectivity actually works and what you can do with it. So here, this is showing, this diagram displays a couple common use cases and scenarios. And on the left, you'll see the customer switcher router that's connected directly to the PacketFabric network. And then from that port on the PacketFabric network, you can build virtual circuits to a large variety of things. The simplest use case is using that virtual circuit to build to another customer location so that you can create data center interconnectivity private cloud interconnectivity if you have that in different locations. And also that's in data center connectivity is also a way to just say connectivity between different co-location facilities as well. From that same PacketFabric port that you're creating a virtual circuit to connect various co-location facilities, you can also connect to internet exchanges, whether or not they're in any of the facilities you're in. So it's any internet exchanges on the PacketFabric platform. We have the big exchanges and 6D kicks, also a large variety of all of the local internet exchanges. We offer direct internet access from a large variety of very popular carriers such as NTT and GTT. We also offer integrated connectivity to cloud providers like Webair, AWS, Google, and Azure. You can connect to multiple customers and partners, as well as SaaS and security solutions like Salesforce, Office 365, Kentic, Zoom, and of course, there's a large variety of other customers on our network as well. PacketFabric is located in over 160 locations in 22 global markets. This is I tried to get all of the sites in the New York metro region on a single map view on my screen. Yeah, I just barely got them at the edges there. So we actually have 17 sites in the New York metro region alone. And you can see that that ranges everything from Staten Island out to Newark, out to Long Island, and with a high density in downtown. If you'd like to see the full list of PacketFabric locations, you can go to www.packetfabric.com/locations. This is an overview showing all of the countries that we're currently in, as well as the countries that we're building to in 2020.
Awesome. Thanks, Anna, for that overview.
No problem.
So Webair has been sort of a customer, a partner, a friend of PacketFabric, I guess, for a few years since you guys have started the company. We're big fans, and we've found really interesting and cool ways to use this capability to sort of provide better services and integrations to our customers, and that's kind of what we wanted to talk about today. What are the really neat things we can do with a product like this? Before I jump into that, just 30 seconds about Webair so you know who we are. Webair is a managed cloud provider. We focus on private cloud deployments, so hosted private cloud, hosted private storage for our customers, hybrid co-location, and then offsite backups and disaster recovery. So think of it sort of like a highly customized cloud provider with bare metal dedicated hardware for our customers. We really focus on flexibility of the integration to our customer sites. We focus on compliance, and we focus on sort of providing services within the existing sort of network paradigms and security paradigms that our customers already have, instead of cloud being an exception. These are some of the metros that we operate out of today, and we're constantly expanding. We've had some sort of nice industry recognition, so related to the use cases that we're going to talk about today, including sort of managed hybrid cloud report from Gartner, as well as being in the Magic Quadrant for Disaster Recovery report in the last few years as well. So what I want to talk about today first was sort of the production use case. So at Webair, we speak to a lot of end users who sort of look at the infrastructure landscape in a very sort of black and white way. These are sort of legacy enterprise customers who have they still are managing and maintaining their own hardware, so their own servers, either on site or in a colo, and they're sort of thinking, should they keep doing that, or should they just move everything to the public cloud? And each one of those options, or the on-prem hardware or the public cloud, each has its own set of pros and cons and challenges, and they're sort of kind of stuck in this paralysis by analysis. Fortunately, the industry has sort of been waking up to that and sort of and realizing that it's not, you don't have to pick one or the other. The future is hybrid. The future is hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, edge, blah, blah, blah. And when Gartner recently polled a whole bunch of CIOs and asked, what is your infrastructure going to look like in 5 years? Almost nobody said all on-prem or colo, and almost no one said all public cloud. 80% said it's going to be a hybrid of all of them. And so today I think people understand that no one can answer the question of what is the best platform, what's the best cloud out there. You have to answer that question on a per workload or use case basis. Each application has its own set of unique requirements around latency, security, perpetuality, integrations, and there's going to be a best home for that individual application or use case. So instead of trying to go all in with Azure or AWS or Colo or Webair or whatever, it's more important to look at this hybrid architecture. And so how do you how do you build that? How can you account for the fact that you don't know what the best home for your infrastructure might be in the future? So what we've been doing over the last few years at Webair is sort of going out to our end users and saying, hey, there is the best of both worlds here. You can get sort of the assurances and the security that you had from having your own on-prem equipment that you operated or you had in a colo, but with all of the benefits of a public cloud, the expandability, the OpEx as a service, the ability to outsource management, monitoring, security, and scaling of your infrastructure to a provider. And the way that we've been doing that is by establishing private connectivity to our customers within the metro that they operate, which has been us literally just ordering a 10 gig last mile circuit from a carrier or tying into their existing MPLS network or their VPN mesh or their SD-WAN and giving them private cloud services that are serviced from the metro that look and feel and act as if they're part of their local IT environment and can even be air gapped from the public internet. And so now they have infrastructure that is low latency, privately connected, and it's also going to be running the same technology. So if they were sort of a VMware shop before, here's a VMware private cloud, same IP addresses, same infrastructure, but you're getting it as a service. And we've been using PacketFabric to establish that connection. Instead of having to go and order a expensive, not flexible circuit from a carrier that takes 3 months, we can actually go and privately connect instantly to enterprise organizations and in hundreds of data centers across the country and the world. And Anna just showed the New York Metro a minute ago. So PacketFabric is in 17 data centers. So think of all the, in New York, so think of all the Equinix and Digital Realty facilities and others in that area as an example. We can drop a physical cable at any cage or cabinet or any of those and say, here's a private cloud as a service, privately connected behind your firewall, and it's giving you all the assurances that you had, but it's as a service. And so this is the model that we've been pushing. This is also sort of the model that even the hyperscalers are promoting today. If you look at Azure Stack or Outpost, the fact that these are even a thing is the acknowledgement that the hyperscalers are being squeezed by the enterprises to have sort of like a local platform running their clouds. And so this delivery model that you're looking on here, it's not just, don't just take our word for it. It's sort of a model that the whole industry is promoting. So we've been very successful in working with enterprise organizations, banks and hospitals and law firms within the metros that we operate, and privately connecting our cloud services into their existing network footprint and IT footprint and giving them those cloud services that are just become part of their existing infrastructure, part of their co-location, and allows them to piecemeal virtualize components of their infrastructure. Maybe they're fine running their own hypervisors, but they've been burned too many times by storage. So hey, here's block storage as a service, low latency as if it's in your cabinet. Or maybe you've been burned trying to manage your own backups too many times. So here's backups as a service as if it was local. So we're doing that for them. Today, here's a quick reference architecture from a hospital that we've done where they're running their own infrastructure in a colo. They needed private cloud side by side. They wanted somebody to own the connectivity to third parties like Cerner and Azure, and they needed disaster recovery. So by using PacketFabric to reach them and being able to instantly deploy private connectivity to them in a software-defined way, we were able to just instantly integrate our services into their existing physical footprint.
Yeah.
So again,
And
yep, yep,
I just,
good.
sorry, Siggy, I just want to jump in. Everything that you said is so right on in terms of that, you know, Webair, Amazon, everyone has these fantastic, outsourced private cloud solutions. And the long pole in the tent is always the network setup. It's sort of this forgotten piece that, even though it's great, in this on-demand world where you can spin up VMs in just like a second in all these locations, is that they still have to connect to each other. And that so often becomes the hang up in these deployments where people are waiting, 3 months or longer for, a private cloud environment that took, not very long to get set up, and you could provision it instantly if only you could reach it.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's funny how the network always is like the last thing that people speak about. Like, and it is the most important. When we talk about like disaster recovery, we always say, hey, replicating data is easy. It's like how are you gonna consume and use it? And it always becomes the network which sort of blocks any of these sort of deployments.
Yep. And
So
good thing PacketFabric takes that away, though.
yeah, yeah, and it's like these are not just sort of ideas. We've been deploying these for probably 3 or 4 years now, and I could show you what this diagram, what it ends up looking like for a hospital and for a bank, and because everyone's infrastructure, especially for enterprise organizations, is not cookie cutter. It has sort of legacy platforms. It has integrations with third parties. You need to go in with a flexible offering and integrate. And so for some of our customers, they're just looking to really just get out of the infrastructure business completely. And so once we have this connection in place, a lot of times we'll just go and do the work to actually virtualize their existing infrastructure, all their VMs, even their physical servers, even IBM platforms, and just move them onto our regional private clouds. And now they have all of their applications running as they were before, consuming them as they were before, just as secure with all the compliance and privately connected. And again, it is sort of the best of both worlds. So this is how we've been using PacketFabric. So when we speak to a customer and they're looking, they have a part of their production infrastructure that's a pain to maintain, that they thought, hey, I can't move this to the public cloud. It's too far away. It needs to be part of my local IT. We say no problem. We're gonna have that physical cable, connected to your private switch behind the firewall. We're going to be on your private network, and we're going to deliver that layer of your infrastructure as a service, and it's going to be as if it was right there. So that's sort of the production story. If you're familiar with what VMware is doing with VMC on top of AWS and how it's successful, think of all of the reasons why that's successful, but they're delivered locally with complete access sort of to the hypervisors and without sort of any sort of caveats uh, on delivery. So the next use case that I want to talk about and sort of how it relates to SDN and Packet Fabric is backups. So you kind of really don't think about backups when you think about networking, but backups certainly is now sort of being stored on public clouds. So a lot of people are using public clouds for offsite backups, right? So when you think of backups in the public, you're thinking, hey, I'm gonna keep my local backups local, and I'm gonna use cheap and deep public cloud storage for my archival long-term backups. And that makes a lot of sense, right? That you have two different sort of platforms to solve two different needs. You have your local backups, which are going to be instant and fast and give you an instant recovery capability and are local. You don't want to be sitting there restoring something that's going to take you 3 weeks. You need that instant recovery. And then you're going to use the cloud for your offsite backups, the archival use case, cheap, that you need to keep it there for compliance requirements or legal hold or whatever. And this makes sense, and I think everyone kind of gets this. The problem is that you sort of assume that you have to manage and keep your local backups. You need to maintain that local hardware and that local software. And so Webair, we provide backups as a service, so we know how difficult it is to maintain that local backup hardware, especially at scale. I mean, it's not easy finding a hardware platform that is resilient, scale out, and has data reduction at a good cost. And so people are sort of just assuming that it's a necessary evil. I'm going to manage my own local backups. Maybe I'll reduce the scope as much as possible, but it's on me to own and operate that hardware and that software and to monitor the jobs and all that fun stuff. So one of the things we're able to actually do with a platform like PacketFabric is to actually make that go away. We can say that half rack of equipment in your colo that you thought that you had no choice but to keep managing and operating and being responsible for because you have production there, we can make that disappear. And the way that we do that is predicated on the fact that, hey, we are local. Our infrastructure is in the metro. It's sometimes in the same building as we're operating. Just like the diagram that Anna showed of Manhattan, there's 17 large co-location facilities where we can provide infrastructure, in well under a millisecond, and we can actually become your local backups as a service. We will be the local hardware and software for your local backups, and then we will then do the job of shipping the backups offsite to the cheap and deep public cloud or third-party storage or even our own. And so we can get, instead of sort of using the cloud to be far away from your infrastructure, we can use a platform like PacketFabric to deliver edge compute and edge storage services within the metro closer to your production to solve problems that you thought maybe I can't use a cloud service provider for. And so again, the way we do that is by running a private connection. We'll drop that cross connect at your cabinet today, and we will be your local backups as a service. And we will take ownership and accountability for the hardware, the software. We actually monitor all the jobs. We include all the software as part of the service. We mostly will provide Veeam software for that. And then for a simple per gig per month fee, we will provide all the hardware, software, monitoring, management, help with restorations, and all that fun stuff.
And one thing to point out there too is that, a huge advantage to moving that local backup off-prem to another provider is the fact that it's no longer a local backup. You actually get an inherent disaster recovery factor by moving that out of the building, which is great.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, right? You get this sort of landing zone, which is going to give you performance for your instant restores, and then you'll still get that additional offsite copy somewhere else. So, yeah, that's a great point. And then also there's sort of the non-technical story around it too. Now, like, today, who's taking ownership of the monitoring and the encryption of the backups and the data sovereignty and the RPOs and all that? This is now an as a service where instead of having to manage hardware and software and break fix, you're just holding a vendor accountable to an SLA. So that's what we're doing again, just to show this diagram again. That's what we're doing in the backup realm, where we're getting closer to the cabinet and sort of saying, hey, you thought that you had no choice but to maintain this, and we're saying no, we will be that component of your local infrastructure by virtue of the fact that we're at the edge and we're privately connected. So the last use case that I want to talk about, and probably the funnest one, is how do we leverage PacketFabric in relation to disaster recovery? And like we were talking about at the beginning, DR specific is really all about the network. Anybody can replicate data. It's not difficult. But so the way that Webair sort of started using PacketFabric for the DR use case is because providing disaster recovery as a service is sort of one of the largest components of our business today. And we provide DR for platforms such as VMware, Hyper-V, physical servers, IBM iSeries and P-Series, direct storage applications of public clouds. And we do that with RPOs as well as 15 minutes, and we take full ownership and accountability for the failover, the failback, provide self-service capabilities to our customers. We own testing, and so because it's like a full-on disaster recovery as a service, it's meant that we have to deal with all the challenges related to the networking. And so what we found is that there are some gotchas as it relates to DR that PacketFabric can help us solve. And this is the first one here. Typically with disaster recovery, an organization will put in a private connection from the production site to the DR site for the replication of their data. And the way that it typically goes is maybe they'll put like a 1 gig circuit in place through a traditional carrier. And for the first few weeks, that gig circuit might be maxed because it's seeding all the initial data and it has to catch up. And so that gig, let's say that gig link is going to be at 100% for 2 weeks. After that's done, it's now only replicating change data. So that gig circuit goes from 100% utilization maybe down to 10%. And normally at that point, everyone's like, okay, this is great. They go away and they're thinking that their link has plenty of capacity. It's only being used 10%, but what's actually going on is dangerous now. There's a false sense of security here. If and when they need to fail over to DR, they fail over, maybe they run out of there for 5 days, and now they want to fail back. And now they have to fail back 5 days worth of change data or 10 days. Now, what's going to happen again is that gig circuit is going to be maxed, and they might need to fail back within 24 hours, 48 hours, and they're not able to. They have to wait for that change data to catch up. And there's nothing they can do if they're on a traditional carrier circuit. You can't call up these big carriers and say, hey, that gig circuit you sold me, can you just increase it to 10 gigs for a week, just temporarily? You can't do that. So what we typically do when we provide DR is the first question we ask our customers is where's your production? Whose colo facility are you in? And more often than not, it's a facility that's on net with PacketFabric, and we say, great, we'll have that cable, that cross connect at your cabinet tomorrow, and we'll start it as 1 gig. 1 gig circuit, and if you ever have a DR event and need to fail back, we can ramp that up instantly to 10 gigs so that you can fail back as fast as possible. And so this capability, you have to build it that way from the beginning, right, to avoid that false sense of security there. So I think this is huge, and people don't really talk enough about this in relation to replication and disaster recovery.
Yeah, I completely agree, Siggy. We see this use case quite commonly. People coming over to us from traditional carriers because they don't have those scalability options. And it's funny because it's one of those things that you don't need till you need it. That's the problem with this. That's the problem. That's the inherent problem to all DR is that everything's fine until you need it, and then when something doesn't work, especially when it comes to pushing a lot of data, that's a huge problem. And with PacketFabric, as Siggy said, one of the great things is that you can upgrade that 1 gig circuit to 2 gigs or 5 gigs or 10 gigs or whatever it is that you need to make, to create that solution for you right now. And that is, you can upgrade in the web interface in 30 seconds if you need it. And we've seen that many times, customers coming to us because the traditional solutions have failed them and they've been looking for something better.
Yeah, and we've been using the PacketFabric for replication for DR for a while now, and it's come in handy a few times. And it's also really nice for us to be able to segment sort of the replication traffic versus sort of partial failover consumption traffic, sort of like these dangerous layer 2 stretches, by using the ability to create virtual VLANs that we only that only actually get turned on during a DR event instead of having to maintain an actual physical port with VLAN tagging at the end user site. There's some interesting capabilities that PacketFabric has given us for that as well. So that's the first one here, and again, it's like Anna said, it's like you don't realize you need it until you need it, and you got to think about it before you go out and build a DR. The next is what you're doing at the DR site as it relates to third-party networks. So if you have multiple connections to third parties at your production site, maybe one is to your private MPLS network, maybe connections to public clouds, maybe to partners that are critical for your business, like a Bloomberg feed or a Charles River, or like an EMR service like an Epic or McKinsey or a Cerner. Whatever you have at production that's critical, obviously you then need them at the DR site. And so what do people do? They call all their partners and they order secondary circuits. They're maintaining secondary routers at the DR site. Then there's last mile carriers that are involved. And it's just like, that's just like a necessary evil of DR. People think I have no choice, I have to do that. And so there's a lot of increased complexity to set up, and there's a lot of increased cost. each duplication, each additional link, you're paying for it as well. So one of the things that we've been talking to our customers about is sort of virtualizing that component. And you can, there might be some of the links or all of them where maybe you don't need to do that. Maybe you have a link that's maybe not latency sensitive, but it's important for you. And so instead of having another connection to that third party at the DR site, with a service like PacketFabric, I might advocate to the end user and say, hey, instead of taking that cross connect at production, let's connect to that third party at a neutral site, and let's land that connection on PacketFabric, and then we'll route it to your production site. And during a DR event, I can just instantly switch over that connection to your partner to go to the DR site. So you don't have to maintain two connections to your partner. I can instantly reroute it from one to the other. And so you might decide to take uh, to establish those connections, maybe at a neutral location. Maybe your production's East Coast, DR's West Coast, and maybe you'll say to your partner, hey, let's do a cross connect in Chicago, and I'm gonna route that over PacketFabric to production, and during a DR event, I log into the portal, I hit a button, and now it's going to LA. So that's one. And I think that that's such a cool capability. It can save end users a lot of money. It reduces the complexity, and we can now sort of take software defined and just bring it to those connections that, again, people thought they just had no choice to take. The other thing that you can do too is maybe you need to maintain those connections at the production site. Maybe they're latency sensitive, or for whatever reason you don't want to just bring it to a third location. So fine, but there's so much value in first connecting it to the fabric, even if you're going to take it uh, in the metro, because the second you connect that physical cross connect from your partner to a fabric, you've now turned it into this sort of flexible software object. You can now reroute that connection to your DR site. And so maybe my infrastructure in New York is down. Maybe my production environment's down, but all my partners in New York are fine. I can take those cross connects in New York and reroute them to my DR site on the West Coast instantly, and with using the fabric. So this is what we talk to our customers about, and these are the types of conversations we have where we can sort of turn DR on its head and solve some of these traditional networking issues. And I would liken this type of conversation to what happens when you take a physical server and you virtualize it. Yes, there's always inherent capabilities around virtualization, but the server now becomes an image. You can snapshot that image. You can migrate it to other hosts. You can increase the resources. That's kind of what you get when you land a cross connect on PacketFabric. It becomes something that's completely software definable, and you can make all these changes to it without involving any third parties. So at Webair, we're using PacketFabric, with DR to kind of modernize it. We're also doing other sort of interesting integrations with SD-WAN vendors in regards to sort of workload mobility, so that we can skip these, sort of conversations around changing IPs and DNS and routing and BGP, where we can move workloads from one place to another in a completely software-defined way by using integrations with SD-WAN or integrations with folks like PacketFabric. And there's just so many cool things you can do when you take these traditional pain points around backups and DR and apply some awesome services like PacketFabric to it. So yeah, what we'll leave you with is just really think hybrid, hybrid cloud, multi-cloud edge compute, and the enabler for that really is the network. That's all we have for you today. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you very much, Siggy, for having me here. I love seeing all these use cases. Webair really has some amazing services out there.
Yep, and we do have a few minutes, so if anyone has questions, now would be a good time to ask them in the little question pop-up that you have on your screen. There was a question if this was being recorded. It is, and there should be a follow-up email going out to anyone who registered with the recording. So I'll give one more minute if there are any other questions. And it looks like we're good. So again, thank you, Anna, so much. I really appreciate your time. I think what you built over there is super cool, and we love using it.
Thank you very much, Siggy. Thank you for having me. And right back at you guys. Webair really has some fantastic solutions around hybrid and private cloud that I think the industry is embracing in a big way.
Awesome. Actually, there was one other question. Are you going to send out the slide deck? Yes, we can. Again, we will send out an email. I'm thanking you. I don't know if this, I think the recording is going to go out. If you'd like a copy of the slide deck, just respond and we'll send it out to you. If you'd like to do a call with myself or Anna, we're more than happy to speak to you further about these topics. So thank you again.
Thank you, everyone.